All right, Cookie, you ready?
I'm ready. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to welcome everyone to the Texans for the Arts Hotel Occupancy Tax Toolkit Workshop today. That's a mouthful. And from this point forward, I think we will be able to refer to this as the HOT Toolkit, which is something that we look forward to sharing with you. I am Cookie Ruiz. I'm Executive Director of Ballet Austin, but in this context, I'm very proud to be the President of the Board of Directors of Texans for the Arts, and so happy to have you all with us today. Being able to share this toolkit with you is a Texans for the Arts goal that has been years in the making. We appreciate the opportunity to share this time together and to mark this important next step in the lives of Texans for the Arts and our service across the state. So as we get started, I'm going to send out a quick poll so that we can get a little better idea of the makeup of our pretty large group of workshop participants today. I'm going to launch this now. And if you will fill it out for us quickly, we would appreciate it. So as we get started today, I want to begin by acknowledging our guest panel members that are joining our workshop. We're delighted to welcome the Vice President of TXP Inc., Travis James, Data Analysis Manager, Texas Comptroller's Office, Greg Conte, the Legislative Counsel for the Texas Municipal League, Bill Longley, and the Deputy Director Counsel, the Deputy General Counsel of the Texas Hotel and Lodging Association, Brian Sullivan. Thank you all for joining us today, and you'll be hearing from this extraordinary group of guest panelists. We also want to take a moment to publicly express our gratitude to the Houston Endowment for their funding of this project, and the Houston Endowment has shared a statement. The Houston Endowment recognizes that by investing in the research and development of the toolkit, it would have a significant impact on the greater Houston region and could have a statewide impact on increasing public resources for the arts. Additionally, the toolkit would contribute to the conversation about the role arts play in community health and well-being, and in the recovery of communities across Texas through and beyond the pandemic. Again, our gratitude to the Houston Endowment. For a quarter of a century, Texans for the Arts has been hard at work as our state's arts advocacy organization, working from the top of the Panhandle all the way to the Valley, from Marshall to El Paso, on behalf of our members, arts organizations, and artists, working to protect and increase public funding and to promote policies that are supportive for the arts. So I want to recognize and thank all of our Texans for the Arts members on the call today. And for those of you who are not yet Texans for the Arts members, we invite you to consider joining us. We have memberships starting at $25 a year for individuals and at $100 for organizations. And you join Texans for the Arts simply by going to texansforthearts.com, where you'll find a red join button on the far right corner of our navigation bar. Very easy to join us. Let's thank you for being here today. We're delighted to have everyone. Over the years, it became clear to us that wherever we travel and whenever we gather with our colleagues, the questions that continually arise, the confusion that persists, has a tendency to relate to one of our state's most important sources of public funding for the arts, the hotel occupancy tax. The project that we initiate today is one that emerged entirely from you, from the field, from our smallest rural communities to our largest urban centers. To share the context of the Texans for the Arts HOT Toolkit, it is my great honor to introduce to you the author and editor and shepherd of what we believe will become an invaluable resource for our state. She is one of our state's most dedicated and successful arts advocates and leaders, the Executive Director of Texans for the Arts, Anne Graham.
Thank you, Cookie, for that kind introduction. And again, thank you to our panelists who are joining us today and to all of you out in the field. We really appreciate your curiosity and interest in being part of this conversation because, as Cookie said, this is a vital part of the arts and culture sector and the tourism sector, and we need to play a strong role in this. So very excited to be here today. As Cookie also said, this project really did start from the field. I began as executive director in 2013, and from the very start, started fielding phone calls and emails from large and small communities around the state with questions about interpreting the hotel tax and how they learn more about it and how they could access it and who made decisions. And one of the things that I inherited in my new position was the first draft of the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, that was between the Texas Hotel Lodging Association and Texans for the Arts. That was sort of the foundational agreement that Scott Joslove, the CEO of the Texas Hotel Lodging Association, and Cookie Ruiz, our president here, had negotiated and navigated as a foundational document. And that's what I sent everybody to. Well, at least go take a look at the MOU. With time, it was like, take a look at the MOU, and someday we're going to have a hotel tax toolkit. So we've been talking about this for many, many years, and it's really a delight now to actually be able to launch this and have this document be a real foundational piece for the field. One of the most challenging things, of course, which we absolutely did not expect, was the pandemic and how that would affect this project. This project was well underway. We were beginning to research. We were beginning to write. We were beginning to think about the launch, and the world was turned upside down. And we wondered whether or not this was the relevant time to actually introduce this to the field. And what we really believe is that absolutely, in fact, now more than ever, we need this resource so that the arts, the hotels, the CVBs, the convention center, and that we're all working together with municipalities to ensure that as tourism and travel does begin to pick up, which we certainly all hope it will, that we are at the table together negotiating and navigating when hotel tax receipts resume, how we're at the table together to improve the quality of life for our residents and to help have tourism be a really important beacon and economic development resource. So here we are now launching this site and very excited about putting it to use. What I'm going to say is, as we proceed this afternoon on this workshop, is please address the Q&A section if you have any questions, and at the very end we will go through those and be happy to answer those. So again, take note if you have any questions along the way. As we navigate the site, there are three main portals: arts, municipalities, and hotels. And we really ask all of you to take a good analysis of the site and to really make sure that you sort of put yourself in the shoes of the arts leaders and the hotel leaders and the hotel and the municipality leaders, because the different portals that we have are really written from the lens of those fields, and they bring different skills and different questions and different resources and different assets to this conversation, and we're all in this together. Texans for the Arts is really, and Texans for the Arts Foundation is the steward of this project. And one of the things that we will be saying throughout is that how important it will be for you over time. Keep calling us, keep writing us, bring your questions that we may have not have answered in the toolkit, because this site needs to be a dynamic, living, thoughtful, growing site. It is not a static web page. We, in fact, just in preparing for today's workshop, I was visiting with Brian with the Texas Hotel Lodging Association here, and we came up with some other ideas about tools for arts and hotels to work together. So ideas to grow this site are really pivotal. So please don't be shy about that, and don't be shy about asking the questions. Before we go any further, I want to just share a teaser about the toolkit right now. And so please cue up the video. All right. Thank you for sharing that. The 3-minute teaser to the website, which we hope you'll spend a lot more time on. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our next speaker. I know Cookie gave him original send-off here. Greg Conte, the Data Analysis Manager for the Texas Comptroller's Office. Greg has worked closely with Texas Hotel Lodging Association and Texans for the Arts in the 85th session when we were able to pass Senate Bill 1221, working together. And this is just a foundational resource for us and for the field. So without further ado, Greg, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So one of the many things that we do in our transparency team is collect hotel occupancy tax from municipalities. So as they're talking about, Senate Bill 1221 in 2017 was passed, and what that does requires every municipality in the state to submit that information to the Comptroller's office, specifically amounts related to how much is collected, also percentage-wise based on what they allocate to certain non-population bracketed beneficiaries. There's 6 of them. And so what cities must do is they must, for those who have a local HOT, they must submit that information to us in either 2 formats. One, they can go onto our online form, which I believe we're going to show within this presentation, and then also 2, they can provide us a URL of what that information is on their website itself. Who's controlling this presentation? Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. Yeah, so here's more information on the actual bill itself and what is required. So as I was saying, if a city wanted to go in and submit their information, you'll see on the right-hand side here, it says submit your municipal hotel occupancy report. They would go in that. That report opens up on January 1 of every year, and it's open for 50 days, going through to February 20th. So a city would go in, enter their information, whether that's either the data that they're providing us or the URL link to the location on their website where that data can be found. As you'll see here, you see where it says reporting period for HOT information begins on January 1. What happens on January 1, that'll open up and have different fields for somebody to go in there and submit their information. What we also do too for entities who select the second option where they want to post it on their own website, we provided an easy to use template where a city can go on there and fill out that template, put it on their website. That way there's more consistency on the user part if they wanted to go in there and see what a city is providing. As you'll see, City of Arlington, I believe that's Arlington, has provided us a URL to their link as well. So what you do is you go into our database, select on that, and that'll jump you off to Arlington or whatever the city is. So when that data is provided to us, we put it on the open data portal, which is data.texas.gov. It's easy. You can find it on that portal. It has a bunch of information from the Comptroller's office as well as other state agencies. And so that's where you can just go find all the information that's provided to us. We don't verify the information. We don't go out and make sure that the information is correct. This is all self-reported information. So we just take that information, clean it up, put it on our website, and make it available to the public. Like I said, it's January 1 to February 20th. We reach out to every city in the state, and we get typically between about 350 to 400 responses. I don't know if that's all of them. I don't know enough to say that's complete, but I would assume that it's not. So one of our tasks every year is to try to make sure that database is complete by reaching out to every entity and letting them know about this reporting requirement. One of the many things that we have an issue with when it comes to reporting is turn of personnel. So if somebody who reported last year leaves the city, they typically, maybe they don't pass that information along that this is a requirement. And so we have to go out every year and sort of reapproach or re-educate the cities on what their reporting requirements are. And this is one of the things that they need to do. And so here's a handy dandy pocket guide that we provide. We do this for counties, special purpose districts, but this one here you're seeing is for cities. And you'll see that at the bottom. That's just the municipal HOT reporting requirement that we have. We also have different variations with eminent domain and local government debt reporting as well for cities. So this is something that we created to send out to cities that they can just print up, post on their chalkboard, and take a look at it every so often and be up to date on their reporting requirements for state requirements. So I believe I've covered all of what I need to. And am I leaving anything out?
I think you've got everything, and I'll add one more little tidbit, and then if there's any questions and answers, people can put them in the chat and in the Q&A, and we'll address those later. One related anecdote is that last session, the 86th session, a number of us were involved in drafting and getting to the governor's desk a county HOT reporting bill. Not all counties can leverage it, but some may. That's a different tax code. And it made it to governor's desk, but did not ultimately get signed because there was some other community had put another attached in another part of the bill. So it wasn't just a clean county reporting bill, but we would like to get back to that because we too really need the transparency and benefit from having that transparency. So thank you, Greg. And we'll find out this session what bills are being, because the bills filing was yesterday, was the start of the bill filing. So Texas legislature is underway practically. All right, thank you very much, Greg. Moving on to Travis James. Travis is the Vice President of TXP, the Economic Analysis and Public Policy Consulting firm. And he's worked closely with us on this project and moving forward around data analysis. So he is working from the data that Greg provides as well as statewide data. So Travis, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ann. Building upon what Greg talked about, if you remember the previous slide, the Comptroller collects a lot of data on how the cities spend their hot tax. And what we've done on this website that you'll see on the next slide is we've removed all the different categories that don't apply to the arts. And what we're going to do each year as that data becomes available at the beginning of the year is we're going to tack on each year. So you can see a trend line on how cities are allocating how they're allocating their HOT funds to the arts. As Greg said, not all the cities fill it out. So we've gone in and clicked on those URLs and tried to fill in the information when we could find it. There are some gaps. So just because a city, let's say the city of Allen doesn't have a field for 2018, it maybe means they didn't submit the information or we couldn't find it through the URL. But that's what we're working on cleaning up. About 220 to 230 cities a year allocate some of their HOT funding to the arts, about $60 million. And what we've done is this chart shows you the state of Texas hotel occupancy tax revenue per year. And you see for fiscal year 20 that just ended, it's down about 25% year over year. And so what does that mean to this group, and what does it mean to HOT funding for the arts? On the next slide, you'll see, as I said, over the past couple of years, those 220 cities have allocated a little over $60 million a year. If you apply that 28% decline or so to fiscal year 2020, it means there's about 15 to 16 million fewer dollars available for the arts. So if they allocated the same 15%, there's about 25% less money. That translates to about $15 million. We won't know until probably March of next year what the fiscal year 2020 looked like. So you don't have to go to the Comptroller's website if you don't want to. Just come to this website and we'll update that every year as the information becomes available.
Okay. Thank you, Travis. That's often one of the first questions that people ask is, how do I find out if my city collects the tax? How much is it? How much is available for the arts? So we're excited about having that now live on this very page. Now we're going to sort of move into phase 2 here, which is actually looking at the site itself and the structure of the site and how you can navigate around it and find out the answers to your questions. As I said, we have it in 3 portals. We have the arts portal, the hotel portal, and the municipalities portal. And again, sort of put yourself in the shoes of the arts leader here or the artist. Next slide. There are 10 different tools in the arts tool, and each one follows sort of a progression of learning more and more about this. And what I'm a really strong believer is the more that you know about this tax code, the more you understand how it is distributed, collected, used, the legal language, the tax bill, the tax law, the better equipped you are to be a partner in the conversation with your municipalities and your hoteliers to strengthen the impact that these resources can have on your city and to increase the percentage in the arts. As you probably know, up to 15% of the allowable collected hotel tax can be used for the arts, may be used for the arts, doesn't have to be. And it's our role to work with our peers in this field and with the municipal leaders and the hoteliers to try to maximize that and to, again, have those resources invested in our community. So that's one of the primary goals of this. So you want the next slide? As you saw in the video as well, you basically work through each one of these tools, these 10 tools. There's context, there's language, there's links, there's toolkit tips, some strong ideas of things that might work for you to learn more. There are links, there are resources, and there's a lot of material here. So enjoy it, get a cup of coffee, and start to work your way through this and really understand more. Proud of this part too, and I think we actually have in the audience here today some of the drafters of these case studies. Case studies play a really critical role, and we hope to grow this section. So if you have something which could become a good case study, please let us know. What the case studies are they're specific examples in communities that happen that effectively address relations between municipality and hoteliers and the arts. Just good analysis of good practice, sort of models that you could emulate in your own community. That each one has the personality of its community, and it is just a really valuable resource. And we hope to grow these case studies reflecting very different parts of the toolkit itself. Next slide. Okay, the next slide is moving into our municipalities and our toolkit here. And this is Bill Longley, the Legislative Counsel of the Texas Municipal League.
Great. Thank you very much, Anne. I really appreciate the invite to be here today. And more importantly, really appreciate the work that y'all put into this toolkit, which I think is going to be a really valuable resource for city officials to help sort of demystify the hotel tax statute and the process. Let me give you a little bit of background on TML. We're a nonprofit association of cities from across the state. We've been around for over 100 years, and our focus is on educating our membership, whether that's through training or providing legal information or legislative information and advocacy, among other responsibilities. Let's go to the next slide, if we could. Here we go. There are just over 1,200 incorporated cities in the state of Texas. Not all of those 1,200 cities have the hotel occupancy tax, but we've got over 1,200 and 1,158, I think is our latest count, are members of TML. And so those cities range from being the biggest cities in the state of Texas, which, you know, are some of the biggest cities in the country, all the way down to some very small cities. I checked yesterday, and our smallest member city has 27, population of 27. So I'm pretty sure they do not have a hotel in their community, but you never know. So needless to say, we have a really diverse membership. I've been at TML for 12 years, and I can unequivocally say that the hotel occupancy tax has always been a hot topic and sometimes a source of great confusion for city officials. But we make ourselves available to city officials through a legal hotline or emails. They can contact us with legal questions on virtually anything related to municipal law, but including, of course, hotel occupancy taxes. We also put out articles for our member cities, legal Q&As, publications like our revenue manual and our economic development handbook that detail the various provisions of the statutes dealing with hotel occupancy taxes. Let's go to the next slide, and we can kind of get into the toolkit a little bit. On the municipal page, you'll see that there are 5 tools listed, and I think this is really cool for a city official to be able to go into the toolkit and actually have this aspect of the toolkit catered towards city officials specifically, and looking at it from the city perspective, whether it's employees of a city or elected officials with the city. So as you can see, there's 5 tools looking at everything from reporting requirements, which Greg talked about, to impact of arts funding on community and economic development, do's and don'ts. But I want to focus on if we go to the next slide, I want to focus a little bit of attention to tool number 3, which is administering HOT funds, because this is the crux of most of the questions we get at TML from city officials is how do cities actually administer the HOT funds? It's one thing to put the tax in place, but then once you have revenue coming in, what can you do with it? And how do you go about doing that? Cities generally have discretion to spend hotel occupancy taxes in ways they see fit, but with certain guardrails that are put into place in the statute in Chapter 351 of the tax code. And so city officials constantly do have questions about whether something's a permissible use of hotel occupancy tax dollars. And sometimes I have answers to those questions, and other times I kind of just shrug and say, you know, your guess is as good as mine, but we can talk through some of those issues. One of the sections in Chapter 351 deals with how hotel occupancy taxes, that revenue can be spent. And it says that the revenue can be spent only to promote tourism and the convention and hotel industry. And so if a city determines that an expenditure clears that hurdle, then it has to be able to fit the expenditure into one of the 9 statutorily approved uses of the funds. And promotion of the arts certainly is the one we're talking about today, but there are other ones related to convention center facilities and historical restoration and preservation and certain sports facilities or tournaments, signage, advertising and promotion, et cetera. We can't take credit for this, but what we call that sort of 2-part analysis, the hotel tax 2-step, and I think maybe Scott Joslove with the Hotel and Lodging Association coined that term. And what we've often done, I know I certainly do this when talking to city officials, and it's even in some of our publications. We refer to that first component of spending money to promote tourism and the convention and hotel industry as putting heads in beds, is a term you hear thrown around a lot, and it's a catchy term, and so it's a nice little turn of the phrase that you can use to describe that. But I want to, and I think that the toolkit is really good about this, is that the term heads and beds doesn't completely encompass the language that's actually in the statute. Again, that language says the funds have to be used to promote tourism in the convention and hotel industry. And while attracting overnight guests to stay in hotels, putting heads in beds is one component of that, that's not it. That's not all there is to that phrase. So there are other ways, we think, to spend hotel occupancy taxes that promote tourism in the convention and hotel industry, other than just putting heads in beds. In the toolkit, we don't have a slide for this, I don't believe, but up in the top right corner, you'll see there the frequently asked questions. There's a really good question about that term, heads and beds, and goes into other options that are available to cities for spending funds that promote the tourism and hotel and convention industry, including promoting of the arts as a part of a hotel or tourism event for hotel or convention center guests, or using hotel facilities for arts events like a gala or a performance, among a few other different options. So I just wanted to pinpoint that question in the FAQs as a good example of where this toolkit really gets down into some issues that I think are really relevant, not just for city officials, but for anyone using this really good resource. And that's what I've got. So next slide, please.
All right, thank you, Bill, very much. And I think we may have some questions afterwards, I hope, that we can field on this conversation. And speaking of overnight stays, as we call it, I'd like to introduce Brian Sullivan, the Deputy General Counsel of Texas Hotel Lodging Association. who works very closely with Scott Joslove as well, the CEO, and we can continue this conversation in from the hotel lens. So Brian?
Thank you very much, Anne, and thank you, Cookie, as well. I believe both of you alluded to our long-term partnership that we've had with Texans for the Arts. And so it's just really a proud moment for us to see you all launching this toolkit and all the information you're providing people all over Texas. We really are on the same page as Bill. We think it's going to be a great resource for even not just cities, but hoteliers who, quite frankly, in our education, when we travel around the state and we do seminars and, of course, now mostly webinars, we try to encourage as best we can hoteliers to think outside the box about ways that they can partner with entities like arts organizations, local artists, for unique opportunities to both meet that standard that Bill spoke about from a legal perspective, but also really just enhance the visitor experience. I think that's a huge part of what the arts have to offer, even business travelers, quite frankly, that are staying in Texas hotels. I remind our members sometimes in our seminars that, no matter who they're dealing with in terms of a hotel guest, I venture to say that they're probably not going to encounter someone that checks in at a hotel, receives their key, goes to their room, and sits on their hands waiting for checkout time the next day, right? And so I think we're on the same page and can all agree that to the extent we can enrich and provide more opportunities for cultural arts, entertainment, and various options for tourism, that's going to be a boon for the local economy and for those folks who are producing that content, who are producing that art. So again, my pleasure to be here on behalf of THLA and our partnership we've long had with Texans for the Arts. And so let's, I guess, go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes here. All right, so just to take a quick step backward and sort of, for those of you on the webinar that may have had an experience in the past where you saw your bill when you checked out of a hotel room, and you saw that there were several line items on that bill with regard to taxes and potentially fees, I just want to give a quick reminder for everyone that in Texas, there are really multiple forms that the hotel occupancy tax takes. And so what we're discussing here today is primarily Chapter 351 regarding municipal hotel taxes. So in other words, city leveraged hotel taxes. But you will also see when you check out of your room or you reserve a stay somewhere, that there's another line item for state hotel tax. And so just for clarity, for those of you who may have seen that before and wondered, well, hey, wait a minute, where are the funds for the arts coming from? It really is, what we're talking about exclusively is Chapter 351. And so the test, the Texas two-step that Bill laid out, that is the standard two-part test that you really need to be walking yourselves through anytime you're looking at applying for use of those Chapter 351 dollars. Now, again, piggybacking on something Bill said regarding that traditional catchphrase, if you will, of heads and beds, he's absolutely correct. There are a myriad of ways in which artists and arts organizations can meet the legal requirements of the statute and at the same time provide really rich value to hotel guests, whether that be traditional overnight accommodations that they're receiving, or whether that just be what they're doing there at a conference or a convention or some type of meeting, a fundraiser, a special gala. There are a host of different events that this could take form. So I want to kind of highlight just for a moment, because in the toolkit, as you see, you have the 5 tools there from a hotelier's perspective. There's a couple of items that I really think are worth mentioning directly when we're all here captive with one another. And that is, number one, inviting arts organizations, or in this case, most of you on the call, you are the arts organizations or the artist, but having some form of a relationship and an ongoing dialogue, partnership even, with your local hotels and lodging establishments. I cannot tell you, how many members of ours, and we have 5,000 members across the state, the smallest bed and breakfast to the largest convention center hotels. But I cannot tell you how happy our operators are to know that they do have artists in their area that want to partner with them, that want to, say, play music at an event at the hotel, or even provide music and entertainment in the lobby around special events or special seasons as we come into the holidays here. There are really unique options for that. The other thing I want to encourage you all to think about, especially long-term, to build some sort of foundation for those partnerships, is consider events and arts types of gatherings that involve an overnight stay. Right now, as we've already pointed out, that's just one way to meet the legal standard. But to the extent that you can take a one-day event and extend it into a multi-day, say a Friday evening type of arts event that really kind of necessitates that folks who are going to engage in that from out of town, they're going to end up staying the night. That's going to be a win-win situation where you have a Friday night evening type function and maybe even a Saturday brunch or a Saturday, coffee or morning activity. That would obviously put you in the right position when it comes to applying for these dollars. But when you do have events and when you do have particularly questionnaires or surveys that you ask your attendees, your patrons of your galleries, your concert venues, your any type of arts facility that it may be, to the extent that you ask your visitors to fill something out, or you ask them to submit maybe on an iPad or otherwise, information, we always encourage arts organizations to ask questions that really get to the heart of eligibility for $351, for Chapter 351 monies. So let me just offer you these two brief tidbits here. If you can begin to ask your visitors from what zip code they are traveling, right? What zip code do they reside in? Then that gives a really clear picture as to what type of visitor, what type of person that you have in your facility, right? Because we can obviously match a zip code to say, well, that's from outside the city, or that's from outside the county, or that's X number of miles away. Just so you have that type of helpful information about the demographics that are engaging in what you have to offer. And second would just be to ask, if they're at all staying there as part of a trip. Is this more than a one-day occasion for them? Again, this is just tidbits of information that you can use, compiled with other opportunities we discussed with partnerships, to then have a really good case for why it makes a lot of great sense for your local city or your officials in power that disseminate these funds to be able to fund your particular activity, your particular event, your endeavor. So I think those are both a couple of questions you want to incorporate into your participant surveys, your questionnaires if you have them, that would be very, very helpful. And then the next, I guess the final point I want to make about marketing, and marketing is so crucial, as we know, not just for the arts, but for really any business. You really need to be engaged with your local Convention and Visitors Bureau or your local Chamber of Commerce. There are a number of Texas cities, mostly those that are mid and smaller size cities, that kind of wear both hats. So you might have a local Chamber of Commerce that's, its primary mission may be to serve local business interests and local business needs with local business members. But at the same time, they also are charged with trying to recruit and attract tourism activity to the area. So part and parcel with that is those officials being equipped with the information about what you all have to offer, about potential packages maybe that you can market to those demographics. When you buy digital advertising as a CVB or a chamber, and you're targeting specific audiences, these are the types of mechanisms that exist in the modern world, right? It used to be that traditional marketing, whether it was for the arts or otherwise, was Texas Highway Magazine, right? Or billboards along the side of the interstate. But now we have such amazing opportunities through social media and digital channels to target that promotion activity. And so you want to make sure that you're right there in the thick of that to the best you can be. And at the risk of getting carried away, because you can see I'm a bit enthusiastic about this stuff, I'll go ahead and pause there and see if there's anything else you might want me to cover before we engage in any questions.
Well, I'm actually going to pose a question for you to clarify for everybody else. Could you share where the state, how the state percent, the 6% for the state tax, how that is invested and how that is spent?
So the 6% state hotel tax, traditionally, there's been a certain allocation of that 6% revenue that has gone to promote the state of Texas. And so through the governor's office, part of his team is really tasked with promoting the state of Texas all over the country and around the world. And what's really fascinating and really kind of a neat story to tell is that those dollars that get used for state promotion, they have a really compelling return on investment, or ROI. I think the last numbers I heard were that it was a 7-to-1 return. So for every $1 that the state of Texas is spending advertising and marketing Texas around the globe, well, we're seeing more than $7 come back to Texas by way of tourism spending. All right, so that's a phenomenal reality. Now, the rest of that money, the rest of the state tax can be used for general revenue purposes. And like I think we noted earlier and Bill mentioned, it's very different in the sense that with the local tax money under Chapter 351, we're really dealing with what's called a dedicated tax source. So whereas, say, sales tax or property tax at the local level is a general use tax where it could be used for any public purpose, the hotel tax is kind of like that one orange in a basket of apples. And so that's kind of the way that it makes sense, I think, sometimes to think about it. But yes, and to answer your question, the state tax is a different source of funds and has different uses.
Great, thank you. And I've got the mic, so now I'm going to ask a quick question of Greg. Greg, question to you is, now that I've, if I go to the arts tool number 1 and I know there's that list of data that Travis has helped prepare for us and my city's not on there, what's the best way for me to follow up with my municipality to say, hey, you're supposed to report this, or what? How can they navigate those waters?
I mean, my advice would be just to reach out to the city, whether it's the finance department or, if it's one of the smaller cities, just a local city administrator, and just say, hey, here's a reporting requirement. I know that we have a hot rate, but I don't see us on this list. Could you provide me with that information? I think that would probably be the easiest way for you to get that. Again, if they're not on there, and they have a hot rate, I think the reason that it's not on there is because they just don't know about this reporting requirement. And like I said before, we're trying to do outreach with all of them, but some do slip through the cracks. But the best way to do it is just to reach out to the finance department or just the front office and just say, hey, I don't see it on this list. Could you provide it to me via email or whatnot, and just kind of alert them to what that is. And yeah, I think that's the best way to do it.
And maybe tell them that there's a way to follow through, and maybe show them the link to the Comptroller's page or something like that too.
Yeah, we would appreciate that. If you just if you want to do our work for us and sort of educate them as well, I think that would be great.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. And before we go to Q&A here, now that I've been nabbing that, also we have this general resources page, and these are the resources at the top. These are what I call sort of the encyclopedia of the municipal hotel tax, and the state taxes up here as well. These are the foundational documents. You can't scroll down on this particular page, but when you're on the web page and you scroll down, you'll see that the different tools for municipal, hotel, and arts have resources that are associated with them. So for instance, on the tool about how does a municipality distribute grant or funding? How do they distribute HOT funding? There will be some resources that might be sample grant programs, or sample program contractual programs that cities have. So you might see an array. So there's a lot of resources that are here for your use and to be shared in the field. And if there are, again, any resources that you don't see that are related to questions that you have, we are happy to dig them up and to put them on this resource page. So now, in the spirit of being dynamic, here, typically, when you're on the page, if you have questions, please go to the Contact Us page, click on it, and you can type in, hey, I've got an example for a case study, I've got an example I've got a question, please help me answer that, and we will follow up and likely add some of this information to the site. Now I'm going to pass this on. Cookie, are you looking at the Q&A there? Do you have some questions?
I am, and I've got a question I want to queue up. And the first one is, I'm going to do them in reverse order. The question is, does the tax law provide any limits to the percentage of the arts project budget that can be funded by the grant? And for example, does the law limit providing funds for 50% of the project and the arts organization needs to find the match of the other 50%. Is that the law, or is that happening at the municipal level? I believe might be the sense of this. That's a very good question.
I'm happy to jump in on that one. There's nothing specifically in the statute that places that kind of a limitation on the use of the funding. There are some general limits on the amount of money that cities can spend on the promotion of the arts relative to their entire hotel occupancy tax budget, and that's 15% for most cities. But assuming that the expenditure fits the general categories we talked about in that hotel tax two-step, and then the money going out to recipients isn't limited in any other way by the statute. Now, Cookie, you're right that there's the potential that there could be some local provisions that cities have enacted regarding how those funds are to be used, but there's nothing else at the state level. And Ann or Brian, feel free to jump in and correct me on any of that.
Bill, you're absolutely right. Absolutely correct. The only thing I would add is I think what some of the questions we get sometimes, I think it's very much aligned with this particular question, is there any type of matching requirement that an applicant must match funds with the amount they receive from their city? And again, echoing Bill, no, there is not any such requirement. I'll give you another example of a situation in which there's not a state law that speaks to the issue, but that local cities have the ability to do. And sometimes we get a question where folks will say, hey, is there anything in state law that restricts funding only nonprofit organizations with hotel tax? And the answer again is no. There is nothing in state law that says you can only fund nonprofits with these dollars. However, we have been aware of a certain select number of cities that on their own have chosen to limit the resources in that manner. So that's again a local decision. I think the legislature, understanding that Texas is so vast and its regions are so diverse, both in geography and culture and everything else, that they really did leave a fair bit amount to the local elected officials to determine how they allocate the funds.
That's really helpful. Thank you for that, and I appreciate it. I believe that her name is Yesenia, who asked the question, a really good question. We also have another question that I think Ann's going to maybe fall more into your area. But the question is that with this system essentially failing during the COVID-19 crisis or any other national disaster, and they reference particularly in Houston as an example, is there a desire or a plan to look into other stable funding sources for the arts that aren't so privy to irregularity and put artists in precarious funding situations? I think it does speak to diversification of our public funding sources.
A very valid and timely question. It would have been relevant historically to try to diversify. As you saw on the slides that Travis shared, the pie has been growing, or the chart has been growing, and revenue has been growing historically until the pandemic. What we're facing, so first of all, the answer is yes, we should be trying to diversify our funding streams. The second critical issue that we're facing with the pandemic is that typically a funding stream, if it's going to be a public one, might be general funds from the municipal, which is being, again, raised through local taxes. And with the economy being absolutely under assault also because of the pandemic, that's not a reliable source in the short term, though there are a couple communities that have seen the merits of the impact of the arts and wants to maintain and help keep its arts organizations alive, and have matched with general funds the funds that have been lost by hotel occupancy tax. So that is a rare and generous and very good position to try to work towards if your municipality will make that commitment. That has a lot to do with having a strong relationship as arts leaders with your municipal leaders, with your hoteliers, and sort of coming to the table together and just saying, hey, help keep us alive. We're actually one of the things that's going to help travel and tourism rebound in our community when there's something to come and do and spend the night and do a staycation, because maybe we're going to travel just a little bit, but we're not going to go too far afield, but we'll do an overnight. So from the public sector, there's also the Texas Commission on the Arts, which is the state agency, which is funded through appropriations. And they're just now using the last of their resources from the previous session, and their budget, of course, will be under scrutiny, and will be advocating on behalf of maintaining those funds in the next year. So the TCA funds are available, and the cultural district money from the TCA also has sort of a tourism focus, as does HOT. It's a little bit different. So those are the primary public resources. The other would be private philanthropy or public-private partnerships. And then what we're also all looking for would be CARES funding, which has now basically dried up as with the post-election. And now we're looking at what will happen in Congress around CARES legislation. And the CARES federal money that came to municipalities, large municipalities, some of our municipalities have distributed those funds. Houston, San Antonio, El Paso, Austin, Dallas. I think that's it at the moment that have distributed. Waco, a couple others have done that. So there aren't a lot of options right now. Advocating at the federal level for CARES funding is happening as we speak. Locally, it's asking for general fund funding, or looking, as you do see, funds, artist support funds in a number of our cities. I mean, Fort Worth has one, Houston has one. So there's a lot of these smaller funds that are available. There's just not a lot of money to be had in the field, and we're competing against the very broad needs. But we have a very strong voice and a very strong reason to make that voice heard, because of the powerful impact that we can play in helping restore community health, community psyche, and try to help rebuild the tourism economy when people start to travel again. It's a very long-winded answer.
I think we can assure the person asking this question that part of the mission of Texans for the Arts is to do just that. Keep our eyes on those opportunities for public funding. And as you suggest, not rich opportunities at this moment, but definitely that's always in our plan. We have another question that came from Facebook Live. This is Paul Driscoll asking, do hotels pay HOT taxes directly to municipality or to the state, and then the state directs the municipalities? Which way does it flow? Municipality first and then the state, or the state to the municipality? We've got the right folks on the panel to answer that question for us.
Yes, I'd be happy to take a stab here. So as we discussed earlier, there are multiple taxes on a hotel night stay. To the extent that we're going to focus on the state tax, the 6% hotel tax, those funds are collected by the hotel. Of course, they're lodged upon the customer, right? So the guest who stays at the hotel actually pays that 6% tax. That's why it appears on the guest folio. The hotel then remits those funds most often on a monthly basis. There's monthly reporting to the Comptroller's office, so that every hotel will be remitting on a monthly basis those state revenues. Now on the city side, then it's the same situation, just instead of going to the Comptroller's office, it goes to the city. So the city funds, then you have a regular reporting schedule where the hotel collects those funds that are due upon each stay, and then the hotel submits their report to its local city. So the state does not get in the middle of collecting city funds. It's really only collecting the state portion.
Thank you for that. That makes it very clear. At this point, I don't see any other questions, but I do encourage anyone attending the workshop, if you have questions, you've got the right folks here to answer today, so feel free. But Anne, right now, I think we've answered the questions that are in the Q&A.
All right. Next slide. we're going to sort of wrap up now, and our next steps to take this toolkit on the road. Typically, we literally would have been on the road. We travel around a lot in the state, doing presentations, meeting with legislative leaders and decision makers and hoteliers. We're very sorry we're not on the road because it's fun to visit communities in person. We've divided the big state of Texas into 5 very big regions. And we started with a regional conversation series earlier in the summer where we were focusing on the reopening of Texas as per the pandemic. We're very, very well received. And now we're on our second round, and we will be doing 5 workshops, webinars. Starting next Tuesday, we're going to be doing one in South Texas, and then next Thursday, and then the week after Thanksgiving, we'll be rounding it up with the other regions. And we'll be doing a similar presentation here. So trying again to get these resources out. We will then be taking, looking for other opportunities to do these, where we'll look at other statewide partners, maybe Texas Municipal League, maybe Texas Hotel Lodging Association, where we do one of these presentations for their statewide organizations or other statewide organizations that represent arts and culture sector and tourism components. So we really are going to be taking this on the road. Again, this is a working document, and we encourage all of you to contribute questions, comments, feedback, etc. I think that is the last question. Last slide. Please spend some time, www.hottoolkit.com, and review the site and let us know what you think about it, and help us put it to use, and hope we have a vaccine very quickly and that people feel comfortable trying to move around. We're all ready to do that and be in person, and really knowing and understanding that the arts is something that brings us all together, and that is something that we really need and treasure and miss now. We know the arts is rebounding in their very own way with virtual performances and socially distanced performances, and we will keep on doing this because the arts just do that. They can't stop. But we need these resources, and our communities need these resources and this investment in creativity. So I can't thank you all enough for joining us today. Our panel members, thank you. The Houston Endowment, thank you. And all of the other partners in this effort. So really appreciate it. Cookie?
If I could, I want to assure our colleagues here today that we did not commission a little video with no sound. Something happened with our sound today. So please be assured when you visit the website, it actually does have sound. It just never fails. I want to thank again this extraordinary panel and good collaborators that we have here today. It's been a real joy for you to take the time to help us launch this initiative. Thank you all as our arts colleagues and municipal leaders and hoteliers that have joined us on the call today, artists that joined us on this call today. Thanks for taking your time. This toolkit's for you. It's there 24/7, and the dynamic part of it is ask your questions and add your content. And I will tell you that our staff will answer and find the answer or get the information to you. That's the entire process here. These are tough times, there's no question about it. But we are in a partnership as it relates to tourism, as it relates to having people come to our cities and really enjoy the potential that we come together as municipalities, as hoteliers, as artists coming together. So it'll be a path back. But I know that each of us look forward to those days where it is safe together again, and it will be. So we look forward to that and forward to that time. Thank you all for the work that you're doing in your cities. As we travel this state, we are absolutely blown away by what you are doing in your communities. So thank you again. Hope those of you that are not yet members will consider joining us, and to our members today, we say thank you. All right. Thank you all so much for the time, and we look forward to having you enjoy the toolkit. Take care. Bye, everyone.